Hi everyone, I'm Annalisa from C.A.C. Global Solutions. I'm here today with Brett for another episode of our podcast, Aviation Perspectives with the C.A.C. And today we are going to talk about aircraft brokerage with another very special guest. His name is Stan Kuliavas, and is Vice President, Sales and Business Development at Levaero Aviation. Hi Stan, how are you today? And thank you for your time.
I'm great, Annalisa. Thank you. And I know between my name and title, that's a mouthful. So
I know.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you for your understanding. So, wow, thank you for accepting the invitation. And I would like to start the interview knowing about a little bit about you, about your bio, who is Stan, what do you do in aviation?
Sure. You tell me how far back we need to go. I think as it relates to aviation, my passion in aviation is unlike many people who say from a very young age they knew they wanted to be pilots or they wanted to be involved somehow. For me, that's not the case. I grew up playing competitive sports, mostly basketball, and so that was always a passion for me. And then on the academic side, it's more the hard science courses, and the maths were really what I pursued and studied. And I had always thought that a career in sports medicine would be interesting. I tended to get injured a little bit, and it was always interesting to me how doctors, reacted to that and fixed myself or others. And I thought that would be a career I would pursue. And early in university, I realized I didn't have the passion that my classmates did, in pursuing that field of studies. And so I was challenged in that scenario where I think a lot of young people are when they start to university is, what do I do? What do I want to be when I grow up? Type of question that you ask yourself. And I didn't know. I didn't know what else existed out there because I had put all my cards in one, all my eggs in one basket. And I realized that basket wasn't for me. And so I didn't know what to do for a while. I kept studying my studies, but it was really my father who encouraged me. He said, why don't you go to the local airport and take an introductory flight and see if you like it? And for context, my father, his entire career, obviously the entire time I've known him, he's been in aviation as well. But to his credit, he never pushed me into that industry whatsoever. I've had a lot of friends whose parents have pushed them in a certain direction, whether it be in sports growing up, whether that be career-wise, and I've seen that create an animosity between, in them, in their relationships. And so I'm very fortunate he never pushed that on me. And so so there's, one day I wake up, it was a weekend, it was a beautiful blue sky day. And I figured today will be the day where I go do that. And I got to the local airport in Kingston, Ontario. I was at Queen's University at the time. And I went to the Kingston Flying Club and said I'd like to take an introductory flight. To hand me a clipboard to fill out my information and take a credit card number, and said, wait there, somebody will be with you. And eventually somebody walked me out to this Cessna 172 that was parked in front. And I got in, and there seemed to be more duct tape on that airplane than I thought that there should be on an airplane that was about to leave the ground. But what did I know? And so the instructor sat me in the left seat of the airplane, and he got into the right and very thoroughly explained everything to me, and then also explained to me that I would be doing everything. And so right from starting that aircraft to taxiing it to the runway for takeoff, the instructor was great and talked me through everything, but allowed me to do it, and not very well, I'm sure, at the time. And then I'll never forget the feeling of, putting in the power and trying to steer with your feet to keep it on the center line. And then when he says pull back, and pulling back, and then just, I can remember it now, the feeling of taking that airplane off the ground and then seeing that left main wheel leave the runway and the shadow that it was creating. And I was instantly hooked. You talk about when did you get bit by that aviation bug? And for me, it was that moment in Kingston, Ontario, when I saw what I had done, and I thought, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to do something with airplanes, and I'm going to be a career, commercial pilot. I'm going to fly for the airlines. I'm going to fly around the world. I'm going to make a ton of money, and I'm not going to work very much because I hear they don't work very much. And so, as a young adult, that became my next dream. And I started pursuing my flight training in Kingston at the flying club there, and they're great. And one thing I noticed fairly early on for me was that they were beautiful blue sky days, great flying weather. And I just didn't want to go flying on those days. And it wasn't because I didn't like flying. I don't like airplanes. I very much did. I just had other things that I wanted to do that day. And so for me, it was a great learning moment that I like to fly when I want to fly, not when somebody else is telling me I need to go flying. And so I thought, okay, maybe a career as a pilot is not exactly what I wanted to do. And at the same time, I had switched my classes that I was taking into business classes and taking classes like marketing. And I had never been exposed to that field of study before, and I was really enjoying it. And so there came a time where then I had to make a decision of what am I doing academically going forward? And so I knew I needed to combine that the newfound passion for aviation and academics somehow. And so again, my father helped me through that. My parents were both very, very supportive in my newfound passion. And my father said, why don't you check out this school online? It's, check out their website. It's called Embry-Riddle. And, oh, by the way, that is where I went to university. And interestingly, I knew that my mother had gone to U of T and graduated from there, but I had no idea where my father at that time had gone to school. It just was never a conversation we had. And so I looked into the school, and sure enough, they had an aviation business degree, which combined both things that I was very interested in now. And so I was fortunate to be able to be accepted to Embry-Riddle, which is, I guess, considered to be one of the, if not the top aviation or aeronautical school in the world. If you're interested in hotel and restaurant management, I tell people it's probably the worst school in the world to go to. But if you're interested in anything aviation related, you're not going to find a campus that's more passionate and more immersed in aviation, whether it's engineering or business or whatever you're studying. And so I was able to go there and complete my undergrad degree. My life, while there, and other things I pursued and passions is another story. But aviation wise, from there, I came back home after my time in Embry-Riddle, and my first job in aviation, I worked for Canada's first and largest fractional aircraft ownership company. It's called Air Sprint. They took a chance on a green kid who had no sales experience, whose previous job was a supply teacher in high school for a few months after I came back to Canada. Before that, for 3 years, I was a college basketball coach in the United States. And so they really took a chance on me, and I'm forever grateful to them for that. And in my 5 years at Air Sprint, I learned a ton. I was able to contribute to the company there and see it grow. And then after 5 years, I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to get into whole aircraft sales, because there, at Air Sprint, you're selling shares or fractions of aircraft, which was very exciting and very interesting to me. But I had a goal. I wanted to sell whole aircraft and help people transact in that environment. And so I was provided the opportunity by the company that I'm currently with. It's, at the time was called V. Kellner Pilatus Center, started by a Canadian aviation entrepreneur by the name of Frank Kellner. From there on, it was rebranded as Pilatus Center Canada. And then about 10 years ago to Levaero Aviation. And I've been here now 14 years. I'm a partner in the business here, and it's great. It's we're the Pilatus dealer in Canada, and so Pilatus PC-12s, PC-24s, the service and maintenance of aircraft. We have an incredibly gifted maintenance department that also engages in life extensions of PC-12s, and so anyhow, that was the long-winded answer to how did I get into aviation and sort of where I am now. So apologize if I've bored you to death here.
No, that was very interesting.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
Yeah, particularly the fact that you weren't into aviation at the very beginning is just kind of something turn on a switch. It actually happened to me too, so I relate very much to your story.
Yeah, I really had no intentions on getting into aviation either when I was younger, just finishing school. And I had designs on graphic designing in Berkeley in California. And I happened into this, and it's been over 40 years now, and there's no getting out of it once you're in, right?
And I was going to say, and you can't get out, right?
No. And, to be fair, in 40 years, there has been the odd time where I've thought about, okay, well, no, I've had enough, but there is no getting out. It's like an illness. You got it, you caught it, and you're stuck with it. So
yeah.
Got
So
the bug.
Yeah.
So I understand you studied business aviations and marketing. You mentioned in your story. So is this the reason why you got into brokerage?
Well, my exposure, that's a good question. My exposure to aviation was always on the business aviation side. So most people, when they think aviation, they think airlines, and flying for Air Canada or being a maintenance engineer at Air Canada or a flight attendant at Air Canada, as a Canadian kid growing up or WestJet or one of those. For me, I was never very interested in the airline side. It was always the business aviation side for me. And so that was also the aspect of the industry that my father was involved in and remains to be involved. From day one, it's the business aviation side as opposed to the airline side. And that to me was always where my interest lay, was there. And so for me, it's a bit of you see what you're exposed to. And, my father was on the marketing side initially, but aircraft brokerage for the majority of his career, as the dealer for another OEM. And so, or multiple OEMs, frankly. And, and that's what you get exposed to. And that's what you sort of more intimately get to know. And so I thought that would be an interesting career path to follow is aircraft brokerage. And funny enough, we both ended up as affiliated with OEMs as well, with aircraft manufacturers. But it's the aircraft brokerage aspect. I tell people that any transaction, whether a new aircraft transaction or pre-owned, about 20% of the time you're talking about airplanes, but frankly, the rest of the time you're just building relationships with people and finding ways to help them. And sometimes that helping is aircraft related. Sometimes it's completely unrelated to aircraft, but it's building a relationship with people that I really enjoy. I mean, I'll give you a great example. One of, as a relationship builder, there was somebody that we were helping, or that we were discussing an aircraft acquisition with. And, I could tell when we got together once, they were sort of stressing about something. I said, what's up? What's going on? And he said, well, my son is super passionate about basketball, and he's really trying to get into the summer basketball camp in the United States, and we can't get him in. They're full, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm trying. And so I said, leave it with me. And so, fortunately, growing up, had a lot of friends and close family friends that were involved in the sport, and one of them an ex-professional player and broadcaster, et cetera, had his own basketball camp in New York. And I said, hey, we got to get this kid in. comes from a good family and he's a good kid. Can we find a spot for him? And they did. And so I was able to, a couple of days later, go back to this person that we were discussing an airplane with and say, hey, I found a way to help you over this problem, or help you through the problem. And I told them. And so, it's those kinds of things that I really enjoy. Yeah, I like airplanes. I'm passionate about airplanes. I like talking about airplanes. Any day I get to talk about airplanes is a good day. But it's all the other stuff as well, and learning about people and learning their stories and where they came from, and and if they are having challenges, if there's a way that I can even help them in a remotely small way. I mean, to me, I like that. And that helps me get up every morning and be excited about what I do. Yes, the airplane side, but also the people, the person-to-person relationship aspect. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, you bring up a couple points, good points. One, we're big fans of the philosophy that you're an agent of your environment, and your aircraft brokerage. I've been in aviation my whole career since high school, and I've known a number of brokers, but it's not something that you see a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to be a broker. So, just the fact that, you were around a broker, your father, and probably you saw lots of different aspects, lots of times where he's doing things that might have appealed to you in the back of your mind. It kind of opens up the reality that could be a possibility, right? Whereas, any other kid out of high school thinking about selling aircraft, yeah, that sounds like such a pie in the sky concept. Like a lot of people don't even think about that. So I find that interesting. But the other aspect, about people, absolutely relationships. I mean, my whole career, I've spent probably half my career in corporate aviation, and I've worked in the airlines and worked for regulators and different things. But to me, it's all been personalities. Like you say, if you can get along with the people, I mean, that's just the basic start of it. But if you can understand where where others are coming from and what they need, it fosters the entire aspect of your career, and not intending for that to be the outcome, but rather it's like an unintended consequence of it, right? It just kind of takes off.
For sure. And look, and you raise a great point. Is look, in my situation, I was fortunate in the sense that I had somebody, my father and my family, that was able to, or that I was able to see as somebody in this industry and follow in their footsteps in that sense. But I then, look back, there are so many kids out there. There's so many people out there that just have no idea about our industry. And, and it's one of the reasons that we try and find ways to get into the high school classrooms, get into different environments, and just tell people about the industry. Because frankly, if it wasn't for sort of my family association to the industry, I wouldn't know anything about it. And I think that is one of our greatest challenges and frankly, problems to be, if we don't fix it, is not enough people know about the fantastic careers that are available in business aviation. And it's not just piloting, it's not just being a mechanic, it's from accounting, from legal, from tax planning, all kinds of different things. And brokerage, as you mentioned, there's so many different aspects, so many different ways that you can combine a passion that you have in the business aviation industry and get to work with great people. And so I think you touched on a great point. There is, our entire industry needs to be more vocal about how great our industry is, the positive impact that our industry provides into the economy, and into people's lives, and getting them home sooner and being able to spend more time with their families, and all good things that just don't get talked about enough.
Yeah, no, I like very much this personal involvement that you were mentioning, because I think it's a more mature way to do business. But I would like to get into the aircraft brokerage. So what are the characteristics of an aircraft broker? What are the key roles?
Depends what day you ask me. Patience, tolerance. No, I don't know. It's look, I think an inexperienced answer would be you have to be good at sales and selling and those types of things. Frankly, I believe in no matter what job you are in, you are always in sales, whether you are selling yourself to someone, whether you are selling a product or a service, you're always in sales. And so I think it's a bit of an immature answer to say, oh, to be a good broker, you have to be good at sales. Really, it's about wanting to help people. And, might sound funny in aviation. So we want to help people. You should have stuck with your, sports medicine role and doing that. But it's being a good broker, I think is a lot of listening. It's a lot of understanding people's pain points and offering solutions to help fix those. And the solutions that we provide happen to be through business aviation, but it's a lot of listening. I've had a good friend, a colleague that I work with, has told me you have one mouth and two ears, and they should be used in that ratio. And there's a lot of truth to that. I think this podcast is, I'm going against my philosophy here, and I'm speaking a lot more. But I think being a good broker involves a lot of listening. That's what I would say.
I find that quite interesting, but I think absolutely it's true, because like you mentioned, or like I mentioned, I've known several brokers, being on the buying and selling end of aircraft, and also just associated with them. I once shared an office with a broker and did some business with him, but more than anything, what I saw was exactly that. People listening to what, not only what technical aspects you're looking for in an aircraft, but rather, what are you going to use it for? How much are you going to use it? What's the nature of your flying? Is it pleasure? Is it business? Is it all of those things? And even beyond that, like you say, I've seen where brokers will come in and have conversation with our principal just about how things are going. And before you know it, it's more of a social relationship than it is a business relationship. And even at that aspect, I've seen where there wasn't even an aircraft to be found yet, but this was the broker that was going to sell him the aircraft because of the relationship. It wasn't because he knew that he would be able to find him the right airplane. It was, he can trust him. He knows that he has his best interests at heart, and this is the way it's going to go. I've even seen that same principal have other brokers approach him with aircraft that would probably suit him, but they weren't the ones he was going to buy. It was all based on the relationship, really.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But this particular principal, he was also the kind of gentleman that he would make a deal on a handshake, and that meant more. He once told me that meant more to him than a contract, because if it has to be written in a contract, there's a chance that somebody wants to break it. So it's interesting.
I for sure. Look, and I'm all about the handshake agreements, and I think that if somebody gives you their word, that means a lot. You get burned sometimes as well in that scenario, and when it comes to contracts, as you mentioned, I'm of the mindset that I like to look at that contract as we sign it and never have to look at it again. Because if you're looking at it again, there's a reason you're looking at it again. So I think the stronger relationship that you can build, the better you can navigate through challenges as they arise. And every relationship, every transaction has challenges at some point. It's not if, it's when. And it's how you're able to navigate those. And I think the stronger relationship that an aircraft broker can have with their customer, with their principal, or with another broker that they're working with on the other side, or the entire team that they're, quarterbacking of legal and whatnot, it's the better for the customer in the end. And so really it does come down to relationships. You're absolutely correct.
So yeah, and with this question, I would like to ask you this. So why do you think it's important to engage a broker? We have a little story. We had one client one time, and he was looking for an aircraft, obviously, and he asked us to look at it with him. but he was very much going his own, his own direction, and he was really driving the process and not listening too much. And it's important to have somebody that has a different perspective and is more accustomed to certain technical characteristics and sales principles to look at it. So why do you think it's important to engage a broker?
I think we live in a world where people are very comfortable and don't think twice about hiring a real estate agent when it's time to sell their home or buy a home, hiring a financial advisor to help them manage their money, and so on and so on and so on. And the examples are endless. For some reason, when it comes to acquiring aircraft or selling aircraft, people think that they are experts, that it's easy, and they understand everything there is, and they don't need help from a professional. That is, it's unfortunate because I've seen a lot of people get stung who tried to go their own. Listen, there are people that have owned 5-10 airplanes in their lifetime and are experienced in that realm, no question. But for the average person, where you are comfortable in relying in the help of professionals in other facets of your life, why do you feel differently when it comes to aircraft acquisitions and sales all of a sudden? That's confounded me for years, but I tried to explain to people that acquiring an aircraft, selling aircraft, they are complex processes, and that there's a lot involved from legal, from regulatory, etc. Buying an aircraft and told, I can go on a website on Controller online and find an aircraft and go buy it and click and it's done. And we have examples where people have done that and then called us after and said, I got stung, or I didn't buy what I thought I was buying. And so I think the earlier that you can engage with an aircraft broker, the better. An aircraft broker really, and let's just use an acquisition process, is really the quarterback in the whole process. They're the ones that are going to be point and run that transaction for you. They're going to assemble the team of the brokers, and if there's aviation legal involved, any other regulatory matters that need to be addressed, any maintenance matters, etc. They quarterback that whole situation, that whole process, and make sure that everyone is doing what they need to be doing for the ultimate benefit of the customer. And hiring an aircraft broker, a professional aircraft broker, one that's been accredited by IATA, for example, the International Aircraft Dealers Association, there's built-in insurance there that you are, it's an insurance policy, frankly, and the money that you spend on an aircraft broker, I can guarantee you, you are saving in potential challenges in acquisition cost, etc. And so there's a lot of value there, and you of course have to have trust with that aircraft broker that you're working with, and that takes time to build. But I would suggest to you, if you are looking to acquire an aircraft, we'd love to help you, but frankly, the best thing that you could do is engage the services of a professional accredited aircraft broker to help you.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. You bring up some really good points, I think. I've been involved in enough sales to understand that they can be very complex. Usually they are. But the whole concept or idea of being like a quarterback, I think you're right, because I've worked for people that have owned, like you said, 10, 12 aircraft, and they understand the ins and outs. They've heard it all before.
Sure.
That's not to say they don't use brokers. They still use brokers, and they know why they have a broker.
And also, you're busy. You're busy running your business. You're busy doing other things. These things need full attention. And so, anyway.
For sure. And, being working half my career in corporate aviation, no disrespect to pilots, but usually there's like a chief pilot. And usually they're really good at what they do, but they're not good at managing maintenance inputs. They're not good at managing pre-purchase inspections. They don't have a concept of, does this aircraft meet type? Does it suit the purposes? Can they use it for what they intend to use it? I mean, buying an airplane is one thing, but if you spend, $20 million and now you've got a nice big paperweight, because I mean, you can go on vacation with it maybe, but you can't use it for what you intended to use it for, that's a big disappointment, right? So having somebody explain the ins and outs of all the different aspects at one point, and I get that a broker won't necessarily understand or won't necessarily know himself a certain question, that the answer to a certain question that might be asked, but you've had enough experience dealing with different MROs, different legal teams, all kinds of different people, that if you don't know, you most likely know somebody that's dealt with this before and can come back with an intelligent answer, right?
Yeah, and I am not shy in telling you I don't know nearly everything that is involved and comes up during an aircraft transaction. And sure, yes, experience helps a lot, no question. But there are things that an aircraft broker will never know, because it just isn't their area of expertise. But you know where to go. You've got that team that can get you the correct answer and quickly. A company like ours, Levaero Aviation, we have in-house research capabilities as well. And so, just to go on a website and say, oh, this aircraft is listed for this and this, anybody's free to ask however much they want for their aircraft when they list it for sale. Right. But what's the market doing? What are the recent comparative sale prices? Those aren't listed publicly anywhere. And so it's in-house proprietary research that gets you that information. And then sure, there are subscription database services that give you some generalizations of value and whatnot, but to truly understand the trends in the markets of the various aircraft types and makes and models and things to look out for a certain aircraft, I mean, you can't find that on the internet. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, excuse me, you used the example of an acquisition, but I'm curious. So what does a broker do for you in a sale of an aircraft?
Sure. I mean, great question. It's in the sale of an aircraft, you are trying to position that aircraft as being the best option for somebody that's looking for an aircraft, and not necessarily. I don't mean that in a smoke and mirrors way. It's if you're trying to sell an aircraft, if anything that you're doing part-time, you're not doing it that well. Anything you're doing sort of passively, it's not getting your full-time attention. It's not being done that well. And so to enlist the services of an aircraft brokerage to help you sell your aircraft is of huge benefit to an aircraft owner, because there are people, these are people, this is a brokerage that is going to devote its time day in and day out to marketing your aircraft for sale. And that's a matter of publicly putting it out there, using various marketing strategies, digital marketing, digital targeting, et cetera, so that people who are searching for those types of aircraft, that this aircraft gets in front of them. There's a lot of phone calls and emails that come in when you put an aircraft out on the market. And most of those, frankly, the overwhelming majority of those don't end up in a transaction. But it doesn't mean you can't pay them the attention, because they might. And so for every inquiry that comes in, there is hours of work on the back end per inquiry that comes in to be able to properly respond to people and then engage back and forth and get them the maintenance documentation that they're looking for. And they may have some questions and something may not be super clear. And to get them explanations, there are regulatory nuances of equipment when it relates to importing certain aircraft into certain, different markets, and to be able to help them navigate those answers so that you are responsive to the prospects questioning, and so that they keep your aircraft as in consideration for their acquisition. And so an aircraft brokerage that is helping you sell an aircraft is good at putting the aircraft out there publicly. They have relationships with brokers throughout the world that they can market that aircraft to. I mean, look, we live in a time today for the last several months where, and before that, because of the fear of, but tariffs. So any aircraft that is not built in the United States, that is not currently domiciled in the United States, is subject to a tariff to be purchased by an American buyer, which all but excludes those aircraft from consideration for any American buyer right now. And so especially now in a challenging time of pre-owned aircraft sales, especially now, you need the help of an aircraft broker who has those relationships to brokers and buyers overseas, for example, because the United States, that's 75% at any given time of the business aircraft buying pool. And so now you've lost 3/4 of potential buyers. And so especially now, you need the help of a professional to help push that aircraft out to the other remaining quarter of aircraft buyers throughout the world.
Right. No, actually, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought about it. I'm curious. In your experience, has this affected the value of aircraft, business aircraft?
The tariffs, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, to some degree, it absolutely has. Look, for the scenario of an American buyer wanting to buy an aircraft that will be subject to tariffs, all of a sudden they want to pay less, of course, because let's say it's 10% the tariff, they're factoring that number in, and they want the tariff inclusive number to be close to the market value of that aircraft. Well, that's not super conducive to a seller, because now they're taking, call it round numbers, 10% below value for an aircraft. So, and we've had transactions impacted by that, no question, even by the uncertainty of tariffs coming in or not, or changing, have affected transactions. On the flip side, if you have an aircraft that otherwise would be subject to tariffs, but is now or has been already domiciled in the United States, to an American buyer, that aircraft is more attractive. So those sellers are saying, okay, maybe my aircraft to you isn't worth 10% more, because at 10% you can buy one anywhere in the world, if that's the tariff number that we're using as an example.
Yeah.
But maybe my aircraft now is worth 6, 7% more, 8% more to you, because it's still less than the tariff. And it's, some number greater than 0, less than 10 is the answer. So anecdotally, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most people don't understand the effect that tariffs have on your domestic costs. I mean, domestic costs typically go up for that same reason. Exactly. Yeah.
For sure. And the parts to, that need to be on an hourly or calendar basis that aircraft need, from a maintenance perspective, some of those don't come from the United States, and then those are being tariffed. And so the tariffs aren't helping the U.S. markets either. So
I'm curious. You must have experienced this over the years, but you must, on occasion, have a client come back and say, "You didn't tell me this. I hired a broker to ensure that I didn't have these problems, and here I am running into these problems." You ever experience that?
It's an interesting question. I would say that, have I heard those stories? Yes. And those stories seem to have been accentuated during that sort of early COVID time period where pre-owned aircraft buying was in a frenzy, and people were buying aircraft without conducting a pre-purchase inspection, because they were afraid they were going to lose that aircraft. And so they just said, "Here's my money, let's go, I'll figure it out later." If you had a good, reputable broker, they would have never let you do that. And I always try to tell our customers, never get emotional about an airplane. There is always a next airplane. And if we don't get this one, there's a reason we didn't get it, and get the next one. So never get emotional about it. And so have people gotten stung that didn't go in eyes wide open, or maybe their broker didn't educate them to all of the upcoming inspections that may exist? Yeah, I've heard those stories happen for sure. I would say on our end, we deal a lot with first-time aircraft buyers. The PC-12, as an example, is often the first, quote unquote, real airplane that somebody buys. And so there's a lot of first-time buyers we deal with, or another type of aircraft. And we also own a charter and management company. And there are people that acquire a light jet, a medium, large size jet, et cetera. And it's their first aircraft. Really, more than anything, it's the sticker shock of maintenance bills to a first-time aircraft owner, where they may complain. There's an old adage out there: you never want to be somebody's first management company. You be their second. Right. Yeah. After that initial sticker shock experience. But look, we really try and build relationships with our prospects and our customer base, and really try and do a thorough job explaining to them what they can expect in the future. Have there been scenarios where, some people think maybe they didn't have the whole picture? Maybe. But, we really try and do a good job of explaining that, hey, this aircraft is, today costs this much, and today is going to cost you this much to operate. But hey, keep in mind, in 3 years, in 5 years, there's a big bill coming. And we factor that in when we evaluate different aircraft. Hey, what do the 5-year cash flows on this airplane look like? 5-year cost of ownership of, does this have major inspections coming up? Maybe this one doesn't. This one has just gone through those. And so those all affect value in a different way, and affect how we rank aircraft that we offer, or that we suggest that people consider. And for us, it's really an exercise about putting all of the information on the table, and educating our customer as much as possible, and giving them the tools to make the best decision for themselves. So that's what we try to do.
You bring up a good point in my mind, that you present all of the information available to you, the broker. Not suggesting it's intentional, but I've seen instances where the brokers weren't aware of all the considerations of some of the information. For instance, we were once selling a Canadian aircraft that had 6 limited STCs, so they're serial number specific.
Serial number, yep.
Yeah, and these STCs were approved by Transport Canada, but only Transport Canada. So we had a sale on the aircraft that went in for pre-purchase, and all of a sudden the buyers, an American, and these LSTCs, as they're called, were not accepted into the US. So it wasn't that the broker was trying to hide anything in trying to get the sale. They simply weren't aware of the implications of this, right? Mm-hmm. And whether I don't know if it was they didn't catch that it had LSTCs, or whether that they wouldn't be acceptable to the FAA, but in any event, it's only the information that you're privy to, that is shared with you, that you can present, right?
Okay, and I think you raise a great example of why having a professional team in your corner is an absolute must. Because somebody who is an entrepreneur, a professional in the oil and gas, the retail, the construction, the whatever industry, that doesn't do this day in and day out, that is looking to acquire an aircraft, is very likely to fall into those traps if you don't have a team that is helping you with that. Look, things slip through the cracks all the time, and you find solutions to those when they do. I shouldn't say all the time, they happen, but and you find solutions. But that is a great example of why you want somebody on your team, whether it's your broker, whether it's the people that are helping you with the professional records review and pre-purchase inspection of that aircraft, to realize that, hey, dear so-and-so, you do realize that these are only approved in Canada, and they're not approved, in the territory that you're looking to operate this aircraft. And so, I think that's a great example of why having a team in your corner is important.
Yeah, I like very much this conversation, because we are pointing out a lot of things that people, even in our industry, don't see or don't understand. There is a lot more to aircraft brokerage than it seems. So, sometimes we come across once in a while you come across the weird one who wants just to flip it quickly and make a buck. So there is a lot to it. Yeah. So for young professionals who may want to approach aircraft brokerage, what are the qualifications, or how do you think they should approach this career path?
I think the best way is to be a former college basketball coach that thought he was going to pursue sports medicine, and that's how you get. Look, I joke, but there is no one path. I think everybody makes their own path. I think, and there's no right or wrong answer, frankly. And some people get in younger, some people get in when they're older. I think the key is for all of us in our industry to be more vocal about the opportunities that exist, so that young people want to be in our industry and see the excitement of our industry, see the opportunity in our industry. And so there is no right path. There's no wrong path. There's just your path. And I think we need to do a better job of showing people that there is a path into business aviation.
Yeah.
Sorry. I noticed just recently there was an article published that you put out about effective communication. So obviously, obviously it's quite important, or you feel it's quite important in order to share it. And I mean, we do as well. We wrote a book just recently, and in the book we talk quite a bit about effective communication and the necessity for it. I mean, it's not a nice thing to have; it's a necessity. You've got to have it. And can you just tell us a little bit about how you feel about that and where that came from?
Super high level, I'll say that I think 8 out of 10 problems in the world can be resolved or avoided in the first place with better communication to start with. I think that, I think whether that is internal communication on your team and your company, whether that's external communication about our industry, people too often fall into this trap of knowledge is power in the sense of gatekeeping information. We like to think differently internally when it is at Levaero. We like to share our knowledge and hope that helps other people, whether our industry or not. We think rising tides lift all boats in that concept. And I think we need to have a bit of a mindset of we need to support one another a little bit better in our industry, as opposed to, sure, maybe we're all competitors in some way, but really we also are those torchbearers of the business aviation industry today. And we need to collectively help one another and communicate better about our industry to others, the benefits that our industry provides. And then internal communication, I don't think I need to get into. I mean, it's, where do you want to be? Where do you want to work as a person? Where do you want to grow as a person? In a place that is open and communicates that way and allows you to, or the opposite, right? I think the answer is pretty obvious.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So Stan, we are getting close to the end of our interview. So I would like to ask you a couple of questions to conclude. Is there anything that you wanted, that there is something in your job that you that nobody told you about that it would have been nice to know?
Nobody told you about that would have been nice to know. I think before I started in the business aviation industry, you have this preconceived notion that the business leaders in Canada and ultra high net worth individuals are unreachable, that they're cold, that they're they live in a different universe. But it's been, from day one, frankly, refreshing how nice everybody is and how open and willing to share and willing to help. And maybe that's not like that in every country, but I found that Canadian business leaders are very warm, very willing to help others, very just open and warm people. And sure, it takes relationships to sometimes break down those walls, because you can imagine the people vying for their time, and and time is limited. And so, but when you're able to to truly build meaningful relationships, you find that they're really great, inspiring people. And so I think I was not necessarily aware of the full extent of that. And so that it's been very nice to see.
Yeah, I think it would probably make it a lot easier for the young, nervous person getting into a new career to understand that the people you're dealing with aren't quite so scary as it might seem, right? Not that they can't be. I've seen both sides, right? But
I mean, I'll give you a great example. My second meeting I ever set. It was the first meeting I went to alone. And this is when I had just started in fractional aircraft sales, and I had conversed on the telephone and by email with a prospect who was the CEO of a major financial institution in Canada, major. And I had gotten to the point of intriguing them enough about our offering that I set a meeting, and they said, come in. And for context, I mean, I got to their building, which is, a skyscraper downtown Toronto on the whatever floor it was, way high up in the sky. And I get there, and their assistant is sort of looking at me like, you? And, I was at the time a 26-year-old kid. At the time, I didn't have a beard and had more hair on my head, and I had quite the baby face, and I looked quite young. And I somehow made my way into the office of this major Canadian CEO. And I could see as I was waiting for him in his office, and he sort of poked his head in, saw me, looked at his assistant, kind of gave the him, signal of that's the guy I've got a meeting with. And to his credit, he sat down and did not for a second dismiss me, and had a very open conversation, and then said, listen, he said, I'll give you credit. He says, you know your stuff. He says, I thought you were much older, when we were speaking and we were conversing over email, etc. And so it's, I think it's just an example of, I was very, very nervous going into that meeting because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was doing, frankly, at the time. And to have truly one of the top business leaders in our country take time and spend a half an hour with me, didn't end up buying what I was offering, but was very, very generous with his time. And so that resonated with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
For sure. I think a lot of times it's the perception that a person holds of those that you don't really know. I mean, again, I worked for this one principal where our chief pilot, he was afraid of the boss, but every time the boss went flying, he'd park his car in the hangar, and then he'd walk through the hangar, and without fail, every single time he'd stop and he'd say, so how's the family? How's this? How's that? Is there anything you need? And one time I needed to put the airplane down for 3 weeks. And he said, sure. My boss wouldn't approach him. My boss would tell him that because he was afraid of him. But he was just, when do you want it? And it's all, like you say, relationships in my mind. I mean, I was open with him. He knew that I wasn't kidding around. He knew that I wouldn't say it if it didn't have to be done. And, it's just, that's how it goes, right?
Sure. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, Stan, how do you see aviation evolving, your field in particular?
How do I see it evolving? I think that, like any industry out there, I think that we're going to see a lot more technology come into play in the various aspects of our industry, whether it's maintenance, whether that's booking charters, whether that's sales to some degree, operationally as well. And so all of those things are going to happen. We have to, and are happening. We have to be not shy and worried about those things, but we have to embrace those things. I think what is not going to go away is the human aspect, the relationship aspect of it. I think the more and more that technology plays a part in our lives and whatever we do day to day, the more we crave actual human interaction. And so I think that at the deepest levels, that is not going to go away from our industry. I mean, most business leaders that use business aircraft do so because they need to go get face to face with folks, and they need to see them, and sitting across a table. And I've had customers tell me I can't close $100 million, $1 billion deal on Teams or Zoom. It doesn't work. It's impersonal. It's convenient for us to have this conversation, but it's not as personal as if we would be sitting in the same room. And this is just a minor example. And so the reason for business aviation is not going to change. And so I think our industry, to that respect, that aspect of it also won't change. And look, are we going to see different types of aircraft come out? Sure. Are we going to see different, more efficient ways to book an airplane, to conduct preemptive maintenance, all this? Of course we will, and that's natural, and that's going to evolve over time. But I think what we are not going to lose is the human aspect of our industry, I hope.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for those starting out in aviation?
I think probably find a mentor, or reach out to multiple people and ask questions. And yes, people are busy, but I find that at least the people that I know in our industry are very open to spending time and giving their time to young folks, whether they're already in the industry or thinking about it. Because I think the good folks in our industry, and there's plenty of them, realize that they were once that person, and that young kid as well, that it was just a pie in the sky dream, as you mentioned earlier, at one point. And so I get a lot of those emails and phone calls, and of course I don't have time to do that every day, all day, but whenever possible, I try to do that, because I was that kid going to shows and trying to ask people questions and whatnot. And it's because people were so kind and welcoming that I was attracted to the industry, as much as I was. And so I think it behooves us to do the same for the young folks out there now.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So Stan, where people can find more about you? LinkedIn page, website?
Yeah, if I'm interesting enough to go find more about, I have a LinkedIn profile, and so I try to share industry insights there as well, and so you're welcome to connect there. And then I would say that's my primary sort of aviation social media. I do have an Instagram page, but that's post mostly about food I'm eating or basketball or airplanes or cycling or whatever I'm passionate about at the time. And so LinkedIn is a great place. I think it's a great platform for people that are interested in business aviation. There's a lot of folks in our collective industry that have a lot of good things and really interesting things to say about our industry. And so I find myself, going down rabbit holes on LinkedIn sometimes about our industry, and there's tons of good stuff there. And so I would, encourage people to go there and learn more about our industry. No question.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Stan, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, so we really appreciate you making time for us. And it was a very, very interesting interview. I really love what you said about aircraft brokerage. There is a lot to it. So we encourage people to look into that and to understand the different aspects of it. And I really loved your people approach to business. It really, sure. I think elevates aviation and the way we do business.
Well, I appreciate the both of your time very much so, and thank you for the invitation and having me. And then if you will, just as a follow-up, send me a note of where I can buy your book on communication. I'd love to pick that up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Stan.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.